Questions are an integral part of education. We use them as part of our everyday practice, and research guides us to take stock of our ego to become reflective problem solvers. We need to know what effective questions are and how to use them with the children that we work with. Insightful questioning can leave children feeling serene and confident. However, the reality of too many questions is perhaps a little more challenging for children. One look at their faces will always tell us when they feel bombarded, overwhelmed, and left scrambling for the right answer. There are different kinds of questions, and different questions serve different purposes. It's a myth that open questions are always good questions, while closed questions are always bad. The reality is that different questions have different purposes, and practitioners need to be sensitive about using the right question at the right time. Closed questions have only one answer. The answer is often short, for example, what breed are these dogs? But closed questions can be useful, for example, to assess whether a child knows specific information, build their confidence by allowing them to answer questions that they're sure about, or focus their attention on a particular topic or detail. Open questions can have many answers, and none of them are necessarily correct. They tend to start with a what, how, where, or why. Great open-ended questions can start with a tell me about or I wonder. Open questions encourage children to think deeply and explore different possibilities, which can build their confidence in their ability to think and express themselves. Open questions can be a preference over closed ones because open questions encourage deeper thinking, whereas closed questions typically require only straightforward answers. Deep thinking is considered more valuable for children because it helps them use what they know and think critically in different situations. To understand the graduation between higher and lower forms of thinking, we can look at Benjamin Bloom's work. He created a system that helps adults focus on what children know, feel, and can do. Bloom believed that to think at a higher level, children first need to learn basic knowledge and skills. Lower order questions focus on the first two levels of Bloom's taxonomy, remembering and recalling facts and understanding, for example, who built the ark and why. Higher order questions involve the upper four levels, applying, analysing, evaluating and creating, for example, what could we do to make room for all the animals? Adults have a lot of control over how conversations happen and can panic when asked to give more control to the children. Studies show that the way adults lead and direct conversations in nurseries is similar to what happens in later schooling. As a result, children quickly learn to answer questions rather than to ask them. Not all questions need an answer. Some are rhetorical. For example, with babies, practitioners ask questions as they try and interpret a baby's signals and cues, and hypothetical questions pose possibilities or plant an idea that can be thought about, dwelt on and returned to in the child's own time. In his book Hare Brain Tortoise Mind, Guy Claxton suggests that children think better and come up with better ideas when they're given time to respond slowly. By allowing them time to reflect and develop their ideas at their own pace, children can achieve deeper and more meaningful learning. This approach, called slow knowing, can lead to better answers. A child's ability to understand and answer questions depends on their developmental stage. By knowing how their comprehension grows, we can ask questions that match their level. Children's development starts with simple comments and yes/no questions, and then moves on to more complex questions like what, where, who, or when. When adults focus too much on their own questions, we miss important responses from children. Asking too many questions can create pressure for adults and children. It's important to listen carefully and give children time to answer. Children should also have lots of opportunities to ask their own questions, both indoors and outdoors. Most questions focus on what children know rather than what they think. Interrogation-style questions check what children know and make us feel that our teaching is effective. In contrast, illuminating questions explore children's thoughts. They encourage deeper engagement, require us to be open, patient, and responsive to children's answers. An alternative is using statements rather than questions. This can reduce children's anxiety about answering correctly, allow children to continue their activity while thinking, make connections between their existing and new knowledge, and reply with a statement of their own. Children give longer and more detailed responses to statements than to questions. Nursery children use fewer words and engage less when asked questions. Preschoolers respond more fully to statements, showing more initiative, and 6- and 7-year-olds' responses to statements are nearly 3 times longer than to questions, asking more questions when not being questioned themselves. Switching from questions to statements helps us break the habit of constantly asking questions to extend children's thinking. By making interesting statements or adding something interesting to what a child has said, rather than interrogating it, we enrich interactions and encourage children to contribute more and in greater detail. Instead of asking questions, we can also use fillers and phatics to show that we're listening. These sounds and single words like or really, paired with positive body language like nodding, can create a sense of connection. This often encourages children to keep talking, whilst questions might end the conversation once answered. Silence can also lead to deeper and more thoughtful responses than questions. Adults can feel embarrassed or intimidated by a silence, but children need up to 10 seconds to process questions or comments, to think about what's been said, formulate a response, and finally physically reply. Using statements instead of questions can help keep conversations with children going. Statements, ideas, and alternatives encourage children to speak and think more and in more complex ways. Ask yourself, am I asking a question that's useful for me or for the child?